What is the freakiest, creepiest thing that's ever happened to you? Serious. I had a roommate who was always a complete asshole. Never was polite or kind to anyone. One night after I helped his drunk ass to bed, he turned to me and said, "I really appreciate you, and I know you don't like seeing me like this. You've been a good roommate and friend, thank you." I found him dead the next morning due to an undiagnosed heart condition that alcohol had amplified. Not creepy or freaky in the normal sense, but I will never forget how serious and genuine he was in his last words spoken ever. It was the first time I had ever heard him compliment anyone. For 2 years, I had a roommate who was on meds for psychosis. It was me, him and another guy. He was fine but a little weird. Me and the other dude always made sure to include him in stuff because we didn't want him to feel isolated and possibly worsen his mental state. He never blew up or anything like that, just a quiet and awkward guy. He was not a drinker. The three of us would go to the pub, but he never had more than one beer. He'd spend the night stoically listening to our nonsense, sometimes chiming in. But this night was a little different. That day he seemed really chipper, much happier than ever before. Not manic or anything, just positive and energetic. When I came home from work, he was chatting with the other roommate and was cracking jokes. We go out to the pub and I get uneasy because he downs his first beer and asks for another, the very first time he has more than one. After he finished his second beer, I took the other roommate aside and we decided to just keep an eye on it. He was having a blast, we didn't want to ruin his fun. He was having more fun than we've ever seen, and it looked like his whole mindset was turning in a positive direction. Eventually we were all 8 pints in. This was irresponsible of us, we had never seen him drunk before and had no way of knowing how he handled alcohol. Surprisingly, he was fine. He hit on a few girls and got some interest in return, we had never even seen him talk to a girl before. When he came back we just had to ask him, "Why are you so happy today?" He said he got some good news, that his father passed away. We put it together that he didn't have the best relationship with his dad. He went into all the abuse he's experienced growing up, how he'd watch his dad beat his mom and little sister, powerless to stop him, or how he'd get tied up in the freezing garage for entire nights as punishment for tiny infractions, just awful stuff. We did a cheers to this because it looked like he was starting to find meaning in life after his abuser was gone. One morning, 2 days later, he was arrested. That day he was so happy, he drove 2 hours back to his hometown and bashed his dad's head in. The worst part is everyone come out to say, on Facebook, that the abuse never happened, including his mom and sister, because he was apparently saying these things to the police. The story made some waves in our state as well, with the court concluding that the abuse probably didn't happen. Edit. Confusing wording, possibly. We went to the pub the evening after he did the deed. He drove out that morning and came back before I got back from work. In 1991 I went to a 7-Eleven by myself when we were at my grandmother's house. There was another kid there about my age, we looked similar, etc. I bought a Slurpee and walked back to my grandma's house, and that was that. The other kid was kidnapped and murdered, pretty much right after leaving that 7-Eleven. The only thing I can think of that kept it from being me was maybe I won some sort of cosmic coin toss. The police are pretty sure they know who did it, but couldn't prove it, and to this day it still weirds me out. I'm 41 now and live in that neighborhood. I was about 10, and I had a huge fear of someone being in my house, to the point where I wouldn't go to the basement because it scared me. But I am glad I had that fear, because one day during the summer I was trying to go to sleep, and I heard a noise from above me, and I freaked out. I then noticed over the coming days that my room was really hot, and I thought this was strange because we just got new air vents put in. My dad was checking them out and went to get some sort of tool when I saw the scariest image possible. There was a skinny man looking at me and my dad from the vent in my ceiling. I froze and pretended not to notice him, and I went to get my dad, and me and my 10-year-old mind was instantly thinking run with him out of the house, but I have 2 cats and were scared to leave them, so I grabbed a paper towel and a pen and wrote in my chicken scratch handwriting, "There is a man in my vent," but he couldn't read it and asked what it meant, and that's when we heard a thud and he looked at it again and must have put it together because he grabbed me and called the police. When my mom got home, she got to see the man being dragged out of the house in cuffs. Even though he was caught and I still had a somewhat happy ending, the image of looking up and seeing his face and being so petrified I couldn't move or scream still haunts me. I've told this story before, but it is still by far the creepiest thing to happen to me. When I was 16 I had just gotten my license as well as my first after-school job. Since school ended about an hour before I had to be at work, I would sometimes park in the adjacent parking lot and take a nap. This was a shopping strip with a grocery store, restaurants, and a bank on a fairly busy Friday afternoon. As I'm sitting there drifting off I see a black Denali pull up behind me blocking my car in the spot. A gentleman jumps out in a business suit and asks if I can help him. He looks nice enough, and I'm assuming he is looking for directions. He starts to explain to me that his wife and he were supposed to be signing for a loan at the bank behind us today so that they can purchase a boat, but she is stuck in a meeting and can't make it. He then asks if I wouldn't mind posing as her and signing the documents for her. I'm completely blown away, but super shy and feel the need to let him down easy. Stupid, I know. So I tell him I don't think they'll believe I am your wife. He then tells me it's fine, he has her license with him, which he shows me, and she has the same hair eye color as me, so they won't know. At this point I'm freaking out. I start to notice how disheveled he looks, he's sweating, and surprise surprise no wedding ring. I just want him away from my car, so I start telling him I can't help him, that he needs to go ask someone else. He says it's fine, it'll be quick, just jump in my truck, and I'll take you over there. Like I said, this bank was in the same shopping strip, there would be no need to drive to it. Even in my gullible teenage mind I know this story is complete bull. I'm telling him no over and over, while scanning the parking lot for anyone who might be noticing, but of course no one has. He then starts getting irate telling me that I'm perfect and the only one who can do it, how beautiful I am, can he at least take me to dinner, and so on. I start trying to close my window, and he reaches through, grabs my shoulder and starts trying the door handle, which was luckily locked. I'm so frozen I don't even really react, I can't go anywhere as he's blocking me in. Suddenly, and I'm not really sure why, I just blurt out that I'm only 16 and for some reason that freaks him out. He slowly backs away, gets in his truck, and leaves. I called the police afterwards, but they never followed up with me. But I just know he had found that license and made up that story as a way to lure women into his truck, and it scared the hell out of me that he could have convinced someone before. Years later I spotted him on the sex offender registry for assault. One night I had a dream that a coworker killed me with an axe, and when I got to work the next day she was telling a fellow coworker that she had a dream that she killed me with a knife. Sort of an odd coincidence, she never did try to kill me, but it was a little bit creepy. When I was about 5 I was visiting my grandma in the city with my mum, dad and sister. We were walking towards the city center so it was pretty crowded. I remember letting go of my dad's hand and then feeling him grab back hold of it a few moments later. I kept walking, I don't know how far. I hear my dad shouting from behind me and grabbing my other arm. I hear him say sorry and I look up and I realize I was holding hands with an old man that I didn't know. My dad assumed that I'd accidentally grabbed onto this man's hand thinking he was my dad. I remember him pulling me away all embarrassed and I was just thinking, but the man grabbed my hand? So basically, I think some guy tried to snatch me out of a crowded area. I still don't understand why my dad thought I grabbed onto his hand. My parents were normally quite paranoid about strangers. He must have been distracted when talking to my grandma. I was alone in my house with my stepdad. I went to the bathroom. When I sat down on the toilet, that's when I saw someone was trying to open the door. I pushed it and said occupied, but whatever was at the other side kept trying to open the door. I called my stepdad and I heard him from the kitchen saying yeah. At that point I was terrified. It suddenly stopped. I checked the whole house for anyone other than my stepdad, didn't find anybody. I went to the other bathroom and then used it. Still don't know what the hell was at the other side of the door. My cousin and I were probably targeted for a scam, but I still don't know how or why. We are 6 years apart, but went to the same high school at different times. Small school, graduating classes about 60. Years later, we are on a road trip together several states away and decide to stop at a Huddle House for coffee. We walk in, and the guy at the next table turns around and smiles and says, "You went to Anytown High School, right?" When we say yes, he says he and his girlfriend, also at the table, smiling and not talking, went there too. We didn't recognize them, but smiled politely, commented it was a small world. He starts to rapidly talk about different things from the school, just disjointed comments that were a bit odd. He talked like a salesman, almost. At first, we smile and nod, but he had weird facts wrong. So we ask what year he graduated. He claimed not to remember. So we asked follow-up questions and he gets cagey. Suddenly the girlfriendos this isn't working and they suddenly pay and leave, food untouched. We since have determined they didn't go to our school and have tried to figure out how he knew what he did, to no avail. Edit. Because I got some questions, neither my cousin nor I lived in my hometown by this point, the car wasn't bought in our hometown and didn't have any stickers etc. From there. The guy had just enough facts correct, 1 or 2 teachers' names, and a diner across the street, totally off the cuff that we really questioned it afterwards. I have a very vivid memory of waking up terrified in the middle of the night and running to my parents' room because I saw a ghost when I was a kid. He followed me and stared at me from the doorway as I crawled into their bed and hid under the covers. We looked at each other for a few minutes and then he left. I was so shaken that I stayed awake the rest of the night until my parents woke up in the morning. I was an adult when I realized that it was not a ghost and actually someone scoping out our house in the middle of the night.